There we go.
All right, we're rocking and rolling. All right, a little impromptu live here with the Copper Factory.
Just testing it out.
Testing it out.
Getting the oil can on the joints of the Tin Man in the woods by 9 Mile Hole. Starting to lift the axe off the ground.
That looks really neat. I like.
Part of why I did this was a little bit of a tip of the cap to our friend Ben Napple with the talking about the Matrix coming back with the red and the blue pills.
The red and the blue pill.
The red and the blue smoke for Ben blowing out red and blue smoke from his various devices that he uses.
Combining together to make purple.
Right. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. We're back.
Whoa.
Yep.
Hang on.
We good?
I'm fixing it. I'm sorry about that. That was my bad.
This meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. I'll check it out.
I forgot to click the shut my all right.
Yeah, I see us now.
I don't know if we started before you had the when we were talking, or I don't know exactly when this started. So let's put the
screen back up again.
Here's put the screen back up.
There you go.
Show everybody. This is going to be the new entrance to the Copper Factory.
We'll have the tunage along with it, and
oh yeah,
maybe even some guest voiceovers as well too. And I was telling Dan the blue and the red smoke were a tip of the cap to our friend Ben Napple, because I'm talking about the Matrix with the red and the blue pill, and then him blowing smoke. So it reminded me of him having a good time on his channel, and thought what a great tip of the cap to him.
Are you saying the blood? Are you trying to say the treasure warriors are blowing smoke up our ass?
No, I'm saying he has a great time on his show by making sure he's in the right mood to do a show. And I've enjoyed being on it. So tip of the cap to Ben and the Matrix and the Copper Factory.
The Copper Factory. Yes.
Yeah. So you worked all day, I worked all day, and then I called, or you said, hey, let's get together, just start talking about the show for next week. And I'm like, you know what? I got bit by the bug again today, and I did a 16-page PowerPoint on all the emails that Jack did to searchers, and we were talking about just maybe talking tonight, and then I'm like, why don't we just go live and show the PowerPoint? Because once I get
you were kind of itching. You're like, I want to hold on to this for another week. And I was going to tell you, hey, let's go live, but I was figuring I'd wait for you to get home, and then you were like, hey, can we go live? I'm like, all right, we'll go live.
Oh,
so we got.
Why not? Let me see if I can find this other PowerPoint here somewhere. There it is, and I'll screen share again. We can start talking about Jack Stoof and his emails to searchers. Let's see how this works.
I'm kind of watching chat tonight.
So Dan, I'm going to go to full screen. Let me know if you see that full screen, and I guess I'll check YouTube now too.
Yeah, I'm going back to
see Alan K is on there, Gedelkin, Bo.
Hey Alan. Gedelkin's like, what the heck?
So after the last couple of PowerPoints, I thought K-Pro's been doing a great job with her stuff. Well, let me see if this is.
You can really hear what K-Pro's latest PowerPoint. You can really hear the professor in her voice, the way she speaks very, very monotone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was tip of the cap to her for she put one of my slides in there, and I had used two of her slides before in mine. And I think, like she said, we're each kind of just chipping away at this, and maybe we'll come up empty, but it seems like the more and more we chip away at it, the more and more we're finding out information. Not that we're disputing that Jack, was in possession of the chest and is the person who's, going to be selling it if it hasn't sold already, but that things may not have happened exactly like were portrayed to us, with the actual find being on June 5th and 6th. Mm-hmm. So this is called Packer Jack Gets Jack Mail 1.0, because Jack Gets Mail 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. So what this presentation is this is a third one I've done. and it's looking into data information regarding the finder. And I put that in parentheses, not because I'm disputing it with anybody or want to debate it, but I think there's just still a lot of discomfort in the community if Jack is the person who found this all by himself, when he found it, and what's going on. And so the first PowerPoint that I did under number 1 was the histography of the Condor 2 Reddit posts. And, was the chest found in 2019? And I went on and did that with Ben Napple, probably about a month ago. And then I did a second one called the auction website, and it was going back to the histography of when that website kind of relaunched in 2020. And we looked at the posts on there, mapped them out on when the dates of updates to the auction website took place. And then I correlated it to that first PowerPoint that I did with the Condor 2 Reddit posts. And so this third one that I've highlighted is Jack's email responses to searchers. And I put one point that I want to go over first is, did Jack slip up with his responses to searchers? And then number 2, the June 5th, 6th situation, is that the big lie? So this may look familiar to some of those of you that remember that we were all working together to put together a Excel spreadsheet on responses that Jack was giving to searchers that were asking him. And this was under a file called Forrest Fenn Quotes from Jack the Finder. I also put that it's emails from Jack, and that email address that you see at the top, jack853198334@gmail.com, was the email that he was using, that we would email to. Dan, I know you emailed him at that address. I emailed him twice and got got 2 responses from him. And there were literally hundreds, over 250, I think, responses that were logged here in this database. So what did I do? After having fun with Copper Dan and talking about doing the show, I spent some time looking up these emails and pulling out the ones where I thought responses were somewhat interesting. So I don't know if Jack slipped up or not, but let's talk about slip ups and not Forrest, but Jack's. And I'm just going to read some of Jack's responses. This was one response to someone named Stanners. And he said, Stanners, I think my issue in 2018 was I didn't know what blaze I was looking for, and I wasn't systematic enough. I fixed those before the 2019 search season. But the limiting factor after was deciding that because I couldn't find the blaze I was looking for, forces of nature have probably damaged or destroyed it at some point before I got there. My strategy on the trip when I found it was to try to imagine how the blaze could have been damaged, so on and so forth. I focused on the fact that Jack, as I read through even his email responses and think back to the Condor 2 Reddit database, Jack is saying I was kind of lost in 2018 till the end of 2018. And I fixed all that in 2019 at the beginning, end of 2018, beginning of 2019. So you'll see from some of the following things that one of these alone isn't a big aha, but as we take the totality of these, as I keep showing them and start putting them together, that it doesn't not correlate potentially to a 2019 find, as K-Pro's talking about and doing with her PowerPoints. So to me, this is a compliment to what K-Pro's doing. And I think, Ben and everybody else who's doing this, the more we look at this, we're painting a picture and we think we're painting it the right way. We could be completely wrong. But again, right here, just off the bat with the first one, I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know where the blaze was. I fixed all that in 2019 search season and my strategy on the trip when I found it. He doesn't say it took me 2 years. Remember, he got into the thrill of the chase in April of 2018. And he uses the word months in here. So if we're to believe that he went on his first boots on the ground in June of 2018, which is what he says in his email responses when he talks about 2018. And if the chest was actually located in 2019 before the end of the year, there may be a reason why he's not saying years and he's saying months. So I just took a look at that and thought, boy, interesting choice of words. I figured out the location where he wished to die and thus where his treasure was back in 2018, but it took me many months to figure out the exact spot. I took 25 days. Again, in itself, this wouldn't stand up in a court of law because you can argue the semantics of it, but they continue. Here's a different email response. If I had somehow found it in my first boots on the ground, I probably would have just taken it and told him after. But the more I thought about it over my months in the chase, the more I wanted it explicit from him and not just dependent on words in a poem, just being careful. We all know this thing could turn into a legal hot potato. So again, not saying, hey, I've been in the chase for 2 years. I've been in the chase for 1.5 months. And then this is a message when he's talking about late in 2018, and he uses the words definitively proved. And definitively means something to me, and proved means something to me. You guys may disagree, but this is what I'm thinking. He says, obviously, I didn't find it on my few trips in 2018. So I had to face the prospect that the treasure probably wasn't there. I tried my best to consider other spots, but in late 2018, I had another aha moment and encountered enough new circumstantial evidence that I felt the total body of evidence I had collected at that point definitively proved that's where Forrest wanted to die. So Jack knows at the end of 2018, definitively with proof that he knows the spot where Forrest wanted to die.
Do you think that was you think you're referring to the slip ups?
That could be because that's late 2018, Dan, and I think, again, if K-Pro and I and Ben and others are on the right track, that if he's having the aha moment at the end of 2018 and has definitively proved where Forrest wanted to die, which doesn't mean he knows the exact location, but he knows it's 9 Mile or wherever his search location was, that we're going into April of 2019, and K-Pro is talking about when he actually got the Santa Fe broadcast or the New Mexico public television broadcast of Forrest. So yes, possibly. I think the thing here is you've got Jack saying, I figured out, I definitively proved where Forrest wanted to die in late 2018 in his email to a searcher as Jack Stoof under the email address that he gave us all to email him at. So here's another one in 2018, but. So Jack responds to a searcher, that's tough to say because I wasn't tracking myself with GPS and being systematic enough in 2018. But my feeling, when I first went there early in the search season in 2019, that it was an area of the forest I had never been before. Again, this by itself, you're going to kind of be like, Packer Jack, what do you mean by that? I mean, I don't get that. I'm looking at this in the totality of looking at over 250 of Jack's emails back to searchers. And there's one thing he's not saying, and that's 2020. And there's also, he's painting a picture unwittingly, I think, that we could call it Jack's slip ups with his emails to searchers when he's using the email that we all use to message him, that, boy, you didn't know enough in 2018, but I sure knew what the hell I was doing in 2019 is the theme that I continue to get from this. I thought this was a really interesting supposition that I'm making, and I could be completely daft, but somebody sent Jack a question and he didn't refute the point that they made that I highlighted. So this is actually the searcher's question. Their number one was, when you made your YouTube video, you knew where it was. I would think you'd want to stay tight-lipped. You said you gave no hints, but you certainly gave helpful information. Why would you go on Toby's show and make that YouTube video to help your competition? Jack doesn't say, I didn't know where it was when I did that on 6/27 of 2019 is when he posted the confirmation bias video on YouTube. So June 27, 2019 is when Jack posted that video on confirmation bias. This person says, when you made your YouTube video, you knew where it was. Jack doesn't say, no, I didn't. He just starts answering the question after that. Correct. I don't feel like I gave helpful information. I was just sharing my perspective. But he doesn't say, I didn't know where it was then. I think that there's a potential sin of omission that he's not refuting when someone's saying you knew where it was. Jack also says pretty emphatically that he didn't collaborate with anybody. And his exact statement was, I am not and was never employed by Forrest, nor did he pick me in any way to retrieve the treasure. I was a stranger to him and found the treasure as he designed it to be found. The treasure hunt was a personal quest for me, and I never collaborated with anyone. So here's Packer Jack, just semantics. Maybe it's meaningless, but What does collaborate mean? It means working jointly on an activity, especially to create something. Like you and I are collaborating on the copper factory. But Jack is saying, I in no way, shape, or form collaborated with anyone. That was a pretty definitive statement. If I go back, I never collaborated with anyone. And we've got K-Pro and Ben finding the picture of, I think from Bavetta, of the Nissan Xterra, a potential search partner. He was emailing Shannon. He was the Condor too, and interacting with people, trying to get information. And of course, if we're to believe the auction website was not a hoax and he was potentially part of it, I find it hard to believe that Jack didn't collaborate with a single human individual. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, if I would have found the treasure, when I was part of the YouTube community, I think I would have still answered that question the same, where I don't consider emailing other searchers collaborating with them.
Yeah.
I think that he was probably meaning it more of like he had a search partner or somebody where he was telling his thoughts to. I think he was getting thoughts from Shannon and thoughts from Toby and from other searchers, but he wasn't really offering anything in return besides his one video.
Yeah.
Which he claims to not be giving us anything.
So I just find that statement very, I never collaborated with anyone. That's a pretty definitive statement. I think it goes with Dan Barbarisi's depiction that he did it all alone. But, Ben called someone and talked to them who was potentially
a search partner.
And so there could be, Dan, but I guess to your point, if I was trying to protect someone, or if I was trying to protect and say, hey, I'm going to take the bullet for the team and make sure that nobody else gets harassed, then I can see a reason for doing this, a justifiable reason to do this. It still doesn't mean that it's true. And it means that it would be, doing something, a noble thing for protective reasons of other people that you care about.
Absolutely. Especially if it's a family member.
Oh, I lovingly call this smell the sunshine or the BS, because I believe that this was actual response to Matt, who had actually emailed Jack a couple times, and Matt's smell the sunshine's emails were in that database of searcher emails to Jack. And he said, yes, he knew I had found the treasure when you were with him, which makes sense because we know that Matt was in Santa Fe at the time of this. I didn't want to move the treasure chest without his explicit permission, so I left it there and emailed him the night of June 5th. I went back the next day and retrieved it with his permission. He was waiting for me to call back to confirm I had it in my possession before making the announcement. Amazing. So I put this up because I've been watching K-Pro and Ben, and Ben saying he's been talking to individuals, and actually had one of those individuals on his show that showed Jack actually leaving Yellowstone, West Yellowstone on the 5th and getting out of there and already being on the way to Santa Fe on the 5th. And, as I look back on some of these emails, are any of these potential slip ups where Jack is talking about when he actually found it, when he's actually taking it down to Santa Fe? Smell the sunshine or the BS. I wasn't in a rush. I think I slept in. I just highlighted, I think. It's an interesting term to use, to say, I think I slept in. Spent some time enjoying the location one last time, carefully and methodically retrieved it, and called him not long after I had it in the car. Jack also talks about, well, Forrest was worried about me because he thought I'd be calling him early in the morning, and, because I slept in. If we're to believe the angle that Ben's bringing to this along with K-Pro, did Jack actually not sleep in overnight, leave the chest there for someone to potentially grab it? It sounds pretty incredible that you would find the chest, leave it there, knowing that it's June 5th, 6th during search seasons when other searchers are going to be out there. You'd have to be really damn confident that someone's not going to get out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, head into Yellowstone, and get there while you're still sleeping off a bottle of wine. So again, this whole June 5th thing with the previous email, and I'll go back and show that one, where he's responding to, I believe, Matt. I'm not certain, but I believe this was a response to Smell the Sunshine. Yeah, he knew I'd found the treasure when you were with him. Well, what days was Matt with him? Was Matt with him on the 5th? Was Matt with him on the 6th too? Was Matt with him on the 4th? Is Jack basically admitting Forrest had known that I found the treasure for a long time, and he knew it when you were with him, because we had been talking and exchanging earlier about this when I was in Puerto Rico, and telling him when I was going to come back and get the chest. Again, that's supposition on my part. I have no proof of that. But again, as we put all this stuff together, again, I think we're smelling potentially BS over sunshine. And this is another question from a searcher. So the line from the outside article is misleading. Retrieval and delivery didn't both take place on a Saturday, only the former. And Jack says, right, it took me time to get down there from Wyoming. I stopped for the night at a hotel along the way. Now, if Ben's right and Jack retrieved the chest on the 5th, he could have, and is potentially pinging that he's leaving and driving towards Santa Fe. You stayed in a hotel, but it was potentially the night of the 5th, not the night of the 6th. And it would be interesting to see, not that we're going to stalk and get hotel records, but does this actually, this outside article saying it's misleading, was this a slip up by Jack? Not that he spent a night in a hotel on the 6th, but actually on the evening of the 5th. This was just one last slide on, Jack's on the auction website, and it led me to the methinks thou do protest too much. Jack is sticking to his guns. I think it's a real stretch to call a troll website like that smart. If they think the treasure could have been stuck up in George Washington's nose at Mount Rushmore, they should have done some basic research into this treasure hunt first. I can't put a rumor to bed if people insist on being trolled. What auction? It's a troll site. So Jack's taking a very strong position here, almost in a Condor 2-like response about the auction website. And when he says should have done some basic research into this treasure hunt, I believe the PowerPoint that I did on the auction site, so that the people that were doing the auction site were very steeped in the chase, knew the exact time and exact videos that Forrest had done to quote a time period, knew to leave the D out of knowledge, left some pretty intellectual responses on there as well, but seemed to be very well versed in the very well versed in the chase. And so this struck me a little as, wow, this seems like a pretty strong, hardcore response to a simple question about what he thought about the auction website. And then this is my personal Packer Jack thing, so just taking some liberties here, but I got a kick out of how sometimes there's coincidences. And here's where Jack's responding to somebody saying, hey, I did think like Forrest in a way, because someone said, boy, you kind of look like Forrest, you act like Forrest. And Jack was saying, well, gee, I don't know about how genetics plays in there, but I'm sure there's some similarities to growing up a white boy with an August birthday and an older brother, whether it's the 1930s or 60s. And I just laugh because I'm a white boy with one older brother and I was born in 1960. So I kind of fit right in the middle there. So that was just my little personal fun thing with this. But in all seriousness, going back to, the beginning of this, Dan, I think it's worthwhile for people to go back and look at the Forrest Fenn quotes from Jack the Finder, the emails that we got from Jack853198834@gmail. And now think about these words that he's using now that we are gleaning information about the Condor. When we were getting these, we weren't talking about the Condor 2 at that time. Some people were, but as a whole, we weren't doing it. I hadn't done a PowerPoint on it. We weren't talking about the auction site at that time. And so I went back and read these and had my own personal aha moments. And I think if you guys go back and visit these, and I know K-Pro will, and I'll send her my slide deck so that she has it. This to me, again, paints a picture of, are there some slip ups in here where it's Jack, it's not the Condor 2, it's Jack responding, and we're getting some potential things that you can put into context with the Condor 2, with the auction website, with the information that K-Pro has, that Ben has, and that picture, that puzzle starts to fill in on what I call the big lie 2019.
Hang on a sec. I am kind of watching chat. So if you guys chat has questions, go ahead and ask. Maybe put the @Copper Dan treasure hunt sign so I see it. But I'm trying to bounce back and forth here.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking too, if anybody has any questions.
I've seen so many slides now that are so well put together. It's starting to get hard to, to really distribute that he probably did, he probably did find this thing in 2019.
Are you saying, Copper Dan, that we have convinced you that it wasn't June 5th and 6th?
So a lot of this relies on that the Condor is Jack. Now, I haven't looked into it. Not that anyone needs to prove it to me, but I just haven't really paid attention a lot to it. But I see a lot of people that very much believe that the Condor 2, is it on Reddit, is for certain Jack.
Yeah, I thought K-Pro did a really nice job of kind of taking what she had, when they did, her and Mike and Ben put up the timeline when they were going back to Jack and Santa Fe. And so I used 2 of her slides in my presentation. And then she took kind of what I did and what Ben's done and what some other people have done, and talking to Cynthia and other people, and has put together a really professional presentation that she and Mike put on there yesterday. And I think she's going to do her K-Pro's Corner or show on it. Mm-hmm. This is just all starting to make sense. It doesn't mean that there's anything crazy besides the fact that the story was made up about June 5th and 6th, which leads to believe that, for better or for worse, what we've been talking about is
I don't have any issues with it either. I think that was something we may have all done. You find a treasure chest. It's potentially, in Yellowstone National Park, what's going to happen if this comes out. You're going to lose it. So, now the finding it, now to back up and say the finding of it on the, back in 2019, was that the right thing to do or not to save some money in taxes?
Yeah.
I personally don't think I could have left it. I don't think most of us could have, but then most of us aren't Jack Stoof that found the treasure chest. So K-Pro has a question. Copper Dan, did you have any discussion with Jack about when he actually found it? No, I didn't. I didn't even at that time. So this was July of 2021. That wasn't even, so it wasn't long after I met Jack that the information from Reddit came out.
Yep, K-Pro says earlier, so here's breaking news. In 2018, Jack used a different email than when he contacted Toby in 2019. Why? I think it lends to the conclusion he discovered it in there. Yeah, I do too. I mean, knowing what we've learned about Jack, and I've complimented him on being an opportunist and a capitalist and all those things that I am as well. And I'd be hypocritical if I didn't say that. But it's just a lot of this stuff seems a little too cute by one on some of the ways he did things. And with the Condor 2 posts, where you're going to keep your mouth shut, don't have another persona on Reddit, and don't be using different emails. And, the question is,
I have a
what did half of Jack? I think there was an internal battle with Jack. I think half of them wanted to spike the football, and the other half of them was trying to keep his mouth shut. And I think we got a little bit of a mini spiking of the football here that we're all kind of figuring out right now.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember what I was going to say, but so actually, this is K-Pro. I'm glad she brought this up because I wanted to do it. I did want to address this. Copper Dan, the Condor seemed to be pretty angry at Forrest, but yet you said Jack seemed to indicate him and Forrest were on good terms. So I brought up to him, forgive me, this is a few months back, but I do remember talking about this, but I brought up to him, why didn't you go back? Why didn't you go back to the Forest? And searchers have said it's because you didn't like him, respect him. And he got so upset that I was backpedaling that question. Jack, I didn't say that. I'm just telling you what, we were just having a conversation. And that was the one question is like, oh man, I kind of felt like I almost tarnished the meeting. He really strongly came out that Forrest had, was special to him. And
Yeah. My
so when
interpretation.
when I do hear K-Pro or other people come out that and do say that Forrest, Jack didn't care about Forrest, I guess I'm going to disagree with that. Strongly disagree with that.
My interpretation, and just from business or watching the way people go at it in the chase and then become friends again or not, is I think it could have been very, very like this from end of 2019 into 2020. But once Jack was going down there and it was over and the chest was there and they were in the room together with their attorneys, I think you could say, hey, it's all good. All's well that ends well, right? And we're buddy.
Very,
and
very much.
so I don't think it was all roses the whole way through. I think it was probably very contentious, especially around the time of the Sexton death. And I think they were both probably extremely relieved, and yet still had to worry about some type of cover up, at least on Jack's part, with some of the truth of what happened, but that it was over with. And I think, now they're, as I said in the auction website, now they're entwined together as the creator of the chase and the finder of the chase. Whether it's true or not, that's
could very much see that when and I tell this story, but when he signed the map under Forrest's name, you could very much see what you just described there. I mean, it was almost like making it official. I mean, he was.
Yeah, and you're entwined now you're the guy you're Jack Stoof who found Forrest Fenn's treasure. You are going to have $1 million to $2 million or more from this guy. And, Jack spoke very glowingly of him. And I do think, to your point, K-Pro, he used the Condor too as his alter ego, just to share his frustration and disappointment with what he felt was the shit show of how it was set up, that Forrest didn't think of everything. And that's why the Puerto Rico thing, and that's why the consternation, and that's why the lying to the community, and Forrest not being happy about it. But all's well that ends well, I guess, is my bookend to that. Even though it's not ending well for us in this bad Game of Thrones.
So the big question I have right now is we're a year and a half from the find of the chest. Why in the world? Why hasn't it been sold yet? What is taking so long?
We don't know if it has. And it was very educational for me to go back and read those emails, because I hadn't read them for months now, and to read Jack as Jack talking about, how his initial intent was to honor Forrest's wishes. But then you remember he sent him, I don't know if it was in Medium or wherever, out saying it just didn't work out that way, and the chest is going to be going up for sale or whatever. We don't know. We don't know what the hell is going on. We know what we've heard from other people. K-Pro knows what she's heard from people. I know what I heard when the whole entity thing was going on. And
I asked Jack when we met, I'm like, that was the last thing I asked. We were getting up to leave, and I said, can I ask you one question? I said, what's the sale of the treasure chest looking like? And he goes, let's just say there's way more to it than I could have ever dreamt. Something, I'm ad-libbing, but something along those lines. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. There's got to be more to it. There's the obvious things we know of. Do you want it to happen while there's still lawsuits pending where it could affect a claim on it? And no auction house is going to sell something if they believe they would have to refund their customers that go to their auction sites because they trust them to buy things through them that are legitimate. So the whole lawsuit thing, number one, is the most important thing. Is there anything pending out there that would delay it? And then, as I've talked about with K-Pro and Mike and others, the provenance, you can sell something as Copper Dan selling, that Forrest Fenn's bronze that you have there, Dan, that's on your desk, and you can sell it, but
I'm not going to, but
right. But you don't have a letter of provenance from Forrest with his signature on it saying, I made this and I gave it to Copper Dan, or I sold it to the person that sold it to Copper. Now you could write a letter of provenance and then have the person who gave it to you put all that together and sign it and say, is this good enough for you? For people that are selling gold coins, nuggets, objects like that, would you be able to sell it with the blessing of the Fenn family with Fenn estate provenance, or is it simply Jack Stoof selling it? And would the family ever refuse to give that provenance, depending upon how
I
Jack
have
was
to
gonna
say,
sell it?
this come from the auction that Shiloh,
Right.
and I also I don't have it sitting in front of me, but I bought a small arrowhead, and that was not from the Fenn estate, but it was a really cool looking arrowhead, and it came with the letter about it. It was all this stuff. You know what this came with? This. I was kind of disappointed with that, and I actually wanted to reach out to the auction house and like, where's the letter?
Yeah.
I mean,
but to the point we've all been bringing up,
it does say, I mean, there is the there's an F. Yes, there was, and it's on. Oh yeah, there's an FF on this, but I mean that by no means says anyone could have put that on there. You know,
Right.
the letter is almost as special as that, but
French fries is what
okay.
it means. It's a French fry holder. You tip it upside down, you put the French fries in it, Dan. Yeah, so that was my little presentation. And the biggest surprise I have after that's done is that, Dan, you said, yeah, I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that it wasn't June 5th and 6th, which surprised me, because I know you've all along, you just use an Occam's razor meeting Jack, or like, I believe Jack's the finder. He's got the pictures with Forrest with the chest. You know, people are nuts that are thinking that it's still out there, or that it's in New Mexico or Colorado or, you know, some other place. But this is the first time I've heard you say, yeah, maybe Jack was doing a little do-si-do in 2019 into 2020.
And I don't think that changes any. I mean, no, that doesn't change my opinion of that he figured out the 9 clues, or let's just say he found the chest. Maybe he had trouble with the last couple of clues and had to do some grid searching. But you know what? That's called being a good treasure hunter. I mean, my first treasure hunt was found not the way I intended, but that's just what treasure hunters, that's just what people do, is, you know, you find another way around. If you can't figure out the way it was meant to be solved, you find another way. You use tools, you use whatever you can. And Jack, kudos to him. If he grid searched the area and spent 25 days painstakingly going through that, and then finally just stepped on it or whatever, you know, or finally figured it out, good on him. I don't think anybody should have any issues with that. You know, if he found it in 19 and left it, he's out of his freaking mind. But maybe there's more to this. Maybe there's a piece of the story that we're not seeing that would make it all go, you know, but.
Well, there you go. And that's what I'm hooked on to that. I do feel for people like, you know, I know Alan Kay's position on this when he says, you know, people spent money on vacations and then another guy died. And, you know, what was the big deal that you couldn't just come out in 2019 and say you found it and the search is over. So I commiserate with that. I also would commiserate with Jack if we found out that he entered into some legally binding agreements that doesn't allow him to comment on it. And he's been handsomely rewarded to, you know, and signed, you know, I can't talk about this stuff. And we have no idea what's all involved in that.
Well, think about this. I mean, think about this, Packer Jack. I don't think he has a job right now.
Yeah.
How is he living?
I don't know. I mean, there's the whole talk about crypto,
not that that's any of our business, but you know,
who knows if his family's supporting him. I mean, if you could basically provide proof, you hear all the time that the people buy people's lottery winning settlements before they offered you the option of a lump sum or to get it paid over 20 years.
Mm-hmm. There
were vultures that will go out there and say, hey, we'll give you just won $10 million in the lottery after taxes. It's going to be 5.3 million. We'll give you 2.5 today because you're going to get that 5.3 over the next 10 years. So
you take it all at once.
But it could be someone who just said, I'll loan you the money, or Jack did make a lot of money off of Bitcoin and sold it when it was high, or he lost it all and he's living in.
I know he did talk to me. we were out there. I think he has done good ones in investments and stuff. I think wasn't there a talk that Jack did some kind of investing even before
He did all the different
finding
types
the
of
treasure?
he did all the different types of
Yeah.
arbitrage, which is basically a fancy word for flipping, right? Whether you buy something and sell it for more. He was betting on political odds in foreign countries on who was going to get elected, and he talked about how he would do all this research into the candidates and find videos of them and find out what their strengths and weaknesses were and what the psychology of the population was that would actually go to vote versus people who wouldn't vote. And he would bet on the futures of who was going to win the election. And he said he made money off of that, but not enough to make a living off of. Is the way that don't quote me on his exact words. He said it was he made money doing it, but not enough to support the lifestyle that he would want to lead going forward. So I mean, obviously a very intelligent guy, and there's
But
no
if
question about that.
so if he did really purchase or move down to where is it? Where everybody says he moved.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. Thank you. I was having a brain block there. So if he really moved down there prior to finding the chest, again, he had to be sitting financially somewhat okay, I guess.
Yeah, and there's a way you can work getting the Puerto Rico tax status. You don't. I mean, you can have someone vouch that you live in their apartment with them down there. I mean, if you want to game the system, you can game the system. So
right.
He might have had to been down there to check in at certain times, but he could be flying back here and not be down there, consistently for 6 months. But the whole deal was he had to wait until he got that actual status to then come and claim the chest so that he would get a more favorable tax situation with it. It's not a dumb thing. It's just, why not just be honest about what happened and not live that lie? But again, we don't know what other obligations he has to not tell the truth if in fact he isn't. And again, I can't come out here and definitively say I would take this to a court of law to indict him right now. So, this is of interest to me, but I'm also not going to sit here and do character assassination and say he's Pol Pot or Hitler or the worst guy.
Absolutely not. I mean, if we, it's none of this stuff really matters. What really matters is what were the 9 clues?
Yeah.
Where was the treasure? Mostly what were the 9 clues? And I would also like to know what, some of the, what were the 9 clues and what were the hints in the book? Now having either or those might be able to figure the rest out, but
right.
Well, will that day come? I say yes, but it may be a while.
Yeah, I believe, well, like most things, I mean, look at what's still, more got released on the Kennedy assassination this year about Oswald confirming being in Cuba, weeks before the assassination, meeting with the KGB. So eventually stuff comes out, whether it happens in our lifetime or not, or 1,000 years from now. Typically, you find out, hey, this is actually what went down. Sometimes it's posthumously. The one weird one that we still don't know is DB Cooper. And that is a really interesting one where some people pay $300 for a ha book.
What are you talking about? Hey, that's not, you know what? Well, first of all, go try to find one. And then tell me it's not worth $300.
Go try to find one of these Pep Dan Cooper pins from France.
Man, you are a collector. You have all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, let's start off with those 3 jerseys behind you.
We're not a picture of, but the actual comic book that matches the picture of Forrest getting into his plane from France. See?
So you were a DB Cooper not long before Forrest Fenn ever came into the picture.
I was, and I actually thanked Alan because I wasn't going on the primrose path that Forrest was, but I was pleasantly surprised that rekindled that desire in me because I love mysteries. And I was, that happened in 1971. I was born in 66. So I was 5 years old. I grew up hearing about DB Cooper, and we didn't have the internet and we didn't have all the stuff that people have today. You had these crazy stories about But yeah, some guy jumped out of a plane, and as weird as it sounds, they did lionize him. They made him into a hero and wrote songs about it. And it's the kind of that counterculture thing, like Money Heist. When you watch that show now,
fast forward now, what, 50 years,
right?
If somebody did that today, oh, it'd be a way different. He would not be idolized. He would not be iconic. It would be
it would be impossible. Yeah, it would be impossible. I mean, the way that you could waltz into an airport like people do into a bus station, not have to show ID. You buy a ticket. You buy a ticket right there with cash, and you walk into the back of the airport. You walk out onto the cement outside, and walk up the back stairs into the plane. And they pour you a cocktail, and you light a cigarette on the airplane. And
when I was little, I grew up in northern Minnesota, so the Twin Cities was a 3.5, 4 hour drive, but we happened to be down there, and my dad said, I was probably like 10 maybe, and he said, you guys want to go watch airplanes take off? And we went to the airport, we walked through it, and we walked up in one of the and watched airplanes take off. And I, to this day think that's cool, but you cannot do that anymore. You don't have a plane ticket. Godalkin says, I thought in order to get tax status in Puerto Rico, you must be gainfully employed in Puerto Rico. That is what I had to do. I may be wrong.
Yeah, and I did post an article a couple weeks ago on K-Pro and Mike's Facebook page on just the cryptocurrency, how people were moving there to do crypto mining and getting residency there for tax status. So it is pretty loose. I know what the kids have to do to get residency in a different state for college and all those things. I think this is a really loose one in Puerto Rico now, where it may be based on things other than, hey, I'm gainfully employed there for X amount of time. I think it's you live there for X amount of time, but I could be wrong. But I would default to that article that I posted a couple weeks ago on Mike and Christie's Facebook page.
And Q says this is a great bromance.
Amen.
Amen. We got
we're flyover country. We're flyover country. We must sound like the people in Fargo.
Yeah, don't you know? As I start talking like this, you betcha. People
Janice
love
feeling
it when
right at home. Janice, like, this is how people normally sound to me. This is fantastic.
This is about what we sound like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, man. We're keeping our promise. What time do we come on at? 7:30? Are we wrapping it up?
I think we're coming up on an hour. This was kind of impromptu, and so now we're gonna go work on getting the before next Tuesday, really getting the show
right
a little more organized. But
so before we sign off, not today's video, but the one that we did yesterday. So it's Monday's show, which was our test show, and this is test show 2. This is an actual casino chip from the Dude Lounge from the 1960s. And if you comment, not in live chat now and not adding this video afterwards, but if you comment in yesterday's video, Dan and I are going to do a comment picker for this coin from the Dude Lounge. And for those of you that don't know, Forrest used to own the Dude.
So the Dude had a lounge, is what you're telling me?
Lounge casino, yeah.
Lounge casino.
Remember from the DB Cooper thing, I also have the matchbook that drove Ben and Alan off the cliff that had the same P.O. box number as the book in Ha Ha Ha. But look, the Dude had prime rib for $6.95. Yeah, man, you could stay there, eat there, gamble there. Montana's gambling laws have changed crazily over the years. So I don't even know if you can gamble anymore. In West Yellowstone, I'm assuming you can, but we'll have to figure out when we go there this year. Dan.
You would think that if you could, there would be a casino. That just kind of seems to be the.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, I did see that there's 20. There was a $25 one that I wasn't able to get, but these $1 ones that I got. Obviously for them to have 25 would be gambling. Sometimes with $1, I'm like, well, is that just a drink coupon or something like that? But I figure when I go out there, I'm going to take a couple of these with me and then slide it over the bar to the bartender and see what they do at the Dude.
They probably get like, what in the world is this?
Right. All right, man. 1 hour.
boy.
That's it. We're cutting off. We're not staying on too long. We're not talking too much. We're not leaving awkward airtime. Appreciate it, Dan.
Yeah. Hey, if you haven't already, the Trolls cache remains.
You and K-Pro are in a cage match, a Thunderdome, a Mad Max Thunderdome now to see who's
It's going to go
hunt is going to
longer.
last longer. Yeah.
I told my search partner with K-Pro's hunt to tell K-Pro that Copper Dan's coming and hell's coming with them.
Well, K-Pro said they played poker at the location, so they obviously had chips there to play poker. So, yeah, cool.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, brother. Have a great night. Thanks everybody out there.
You too. Thanks everyone.
For tuning in and for your great show last night. And I'll shoot you this PowerPoint if you want to use anything on there. And let's keep going with what we think is the right thing to do to figure out what the truth is on what happened. And again, I'm not going to try to take shots at Jack, disparage him.
That's not what this channel is all about, because we want to get Jack to come on the show.
Yeah, well, he's probably not after that PowerPoint presentation. So you might have
thanks
to
a lot. Thanks a lot, partner.
That'll be the copper, and we'll just black out the factory and you'll have him on without me there.
I think he would still come on.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.
Yep. Thanks, subscribe, Dan. Do all that fun stuff. You know what to do. All right. See you guys.
See you, everybody.